passionate courage, and to act with bold conviction.
When renewal movements start, they start in the wilderness. The prophets, they strip off all of the trappings of society and all of their comforts. They strip away everything comfortable, and they go into the wilderness. I saw that it was a mess, and I saw that it was holy, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Only goodness flows from God. Blessed is God's mercy, forgiving debts and redeeming wrongs. Blessed is God's mercy. This is why we stand in love. Blessed is God's mercy.
And the minute I connected with Occupy Boston, that sense of despair has just completely evaporated. And instead I just feel energized. Not that I know what's coming, not that I know what this will lead to, but I just feel enormously energized.
Sort of rolled out some camping pads and put some, like, these little pathetic, LED candles, right? Which are, in one sense, so the symbol of everything that's wrong. It's like everything is a simulacrum of the real. Now you have like fake candles for fake flame. But we set these candles out, and there were some camping pads, and it was like, if you build it, they will come. Just immediately, people started meditating all over the place, and that was the first sort of signal to me, like, okay, yeah, we're onto something, and we need to provide this.
The first day when we went on the march, and it was me and Robin, and we were both in our albs, and we had this processional cardboard cross and these two signs that said, "Blessed are the poor and blessed are the peacemakers." And we just kind of marched all around Boston with these signs.
The movement does itself a disservice if it doesn't tap into the power of religion.
It's been way too long, since Christians actually showed up as Christians on the side of justice and on the side of peace.
We feel called to minister to the whole world in a certain way, to call them into a right relation of health, wholesomeness, peace, righteousness. So the chaplaincy was, again, just sort of like focused to those who were looking in, speaking to them, and using the platform of protest to reach out and show people that another way is possible.
One of the things we've constantly talked about is getting the people out of the churches and the synagogues and the mosques and into the streets.
It's better for one to pray with their feet than to pray with a false heart.
So let me show up on the ground in a supportive way, trying to hold space in a non-anxious way for emotional support, spiritual support.
And to be with young people who are saying, we are unstoppable, another world is possible, is just, there's just so much joy in it.
Right now is a rewriting or a redrafting of our story. And it's about the relationships that we have to each other and to the planet.
I believe that for change to happen, it needs to happen sort of at our core. And I believe that sort of faith, no matter what tradition you're coming from, sort of who you are, having that space in Occupy areas is really, really important. A space where people can come and meditate, can pray, can be in community together, ground themselves for all the really hard work that we're all doing.
I think raising voices in a particular direction can be extremely powerful, but a meditative presence here feels friendly and kind and embracing of anybody who's walking by, whether they see you or whether they know what you're about. They know that you wish them no harm.
My spirituality is rooted in the earth and rooted in the belief that each one of us is the goddess, each one of us is an aspect of the sacred. And for me, the Occupy movement is a spiritual and a moral movement. It's a movement that says, hey, everybody's voice is important.
If we saw the face of God, if we saw God in one another, really and truly, in every single person, how could we not act?
Blessed is God's mercy. This is why we stand in love. Blessed is God's mercy. Goodness flows from God. Blessed is God's mercy. Forgiving debts and redeeming wrongs. Blessed is God's mercy. This is why we stand in love. Blessed is God's mercy.
I believe that in a very fundamental way the world is kind of a fallen place. And I don't mean that in sort of a judgy way, but I mean I just think that there are a lot of systems in the world that are just massively unjust, massively immoral. And I think that Christ came into the world not just as sort of a personal sort of salvation deal to save us from drinking, looking at pornography or something. But I think that there's a much deeper need for salvation, just sort of in a universal way. And I think that there are a lot of systems of oppression that all of us sometimes buy into, whether or not we think about it, whether or not we mean to be oppressive. And I think that things like Occupy Boston and the Occupy movement in general is doing a much better job of trying to identify those systems of oppression and to struggle against them, which I think is important.
One of the precepts, the 5 main precepts in Buddhism, one of them is not to steal. If you're going to be serious about not stealing, to engage with that realistically in this world, we have to examine the systems which create stealing even before someone's born, before someone reaches into someone else's pocket and takes money. There's systems created and perpetuated where I think we could say stealing takes place. So in this day and age, to be serious about not stealing, what proactive decisions, choices does that require someone to take? Coming from a Buddhist place, to be serious about lessening suffering in this time, we have to take a systemic approach because systems are creating the bulk of the suffering.
Seed of deception goes a long, long time ago, way back in time. The seed of deception was placed within the mind. The woman was a victim of the slimy plot, and then her husband with her. Both died on the spot. Now every child born after his deceit within their flesh is the seed of self-deception that tells us we're not a mess. It's the seed of procrastination that says, we'll be all right. It's the lie of racism, the dictate of statism, the government of Platoism, the sowing of self, the gaining of wealth, the building of self to protect the health of a nation, gone astray.
And one of the things that I myself have been wrestling with for a while, and now I have sort of a lab in which to work on it, is the relationship of the ancient faith of Christianity to a world that feels very cynical about Christianity and feels in many cases really violated by Christianity. And I've been wondering and struggling with what to do about that.
What Jesus calls us to and what Jesus exemplified by his teaching and his life is justice for the poor, an end of prejudice, an end of hoarding of wealth, an economy of plenty instead of an economy of scarcity. And I want to embody that with my life and work for that to come about in our society.
So I was on the Faith and Spirituality page, website, Facebook page, yesterday, and somebody posted a comment that was really very angry at Christianity and tending to demonize Christianity and pointing out the bad that it had done. And I considered getting defensive and saying, well, we're not all like that. And instead, what I said was, as an anti-imperialist Christian, I said I repent and I beg forgiveness. I ask your forgiveness. And I hope that we can, even though we can't undo the past, I hope that we can make a friendship now in the present. Because I figure, you know, this is a starting over. I love that slogan of this movement, the beginning is near.
That the thing we call God is so good and so on the side of peace and justice and overflowing, ridiculous, incomprehensible love. For that voice and that tradition and that whole language for a vision of the sacred, you know, for the self-sacrificial love, right, you know, of the story of Jesus, you know, for that to have been so thoroughly co-opted by the religious right, hijacked for everything that, you know, the millions and millions of liberal Christians in this country and elsewhere, you know, hold as our most sacred text, stories, language, song, you know, all of that, the reason for getting out of bed on a Sunday morning, you know, for all of that to then be used for hate and exclusion and making war, I can't call myself a Christian. I can't enjoy the deep connection and communion that I find in my spiritual practices and my attending liturgies, and not also be putting myself on the line to give the voice of justice and peace and truth and freedom, not just a hearing, but an embodiment. That's my job. There is no protest outside of my faith. There is no faith outside of my protest. Not in America in 2011.
Yeah, when I think of Jesus' ministry, I see him entering marginalized spaces, eating with, you know, people that are on the margins, either tax collectors or sinners or lepers or whoever. And I think that this space is similar to entering that vulnerability and opening yourself up to people's criticisms around this movement, around these issues. Saying I'm going to be part of this or share in this space, people see it as very fringy, and it kind of damages your credibility with people in power in certain situations. But that's not the legitimacy that's not Christian legitimacy. Christian legitimacy is legitimacy with those who are marginalized.
It's the seed of deception. It tells us God's not on his throne. We're all left alone, bound by religion. Go ahead, make a decision. Always lead to God. The only way to break the seed of deception is for us to recognize we're headed in the wrong direction. There was a man on earth a long, long time ago who spoke of love, truth, and righteousness, and he's still being heard today. He said the truth would make you free from this deceptive seed, and all you have to do is repent, and in him, believe. Thank you.
The Pharisees, the Levites, the scribes have a very kind of limited group of who's in the in group, and Jesus is saying you gotta open up, widen the tent flaps so you can get more people into the tent, because his definition of the reign of God is that it's a place where all people belong, so you can't narrow that. If you were to move that to an economic rather than a religious model, then it's what Occupy Boston is saying.
Tension, there's anxiety, there's fear, and there's a lot of just chaotic energy that's around here. So it's a constant spiritual practice to be, to find a calm, to be aware, to be mindful of thoughts and actions. And I think there's a definite spiritual component of what we're going through here, because those that would like to see us fail, those that would like things to remain as they are, for the status quo to remain, for the power structures to remain, they would like to see us fail by seeing us collapse in a state of fear. And if we fall into fear, we fall into separation, into duality, and we rip each other apart. But I really do feel that success is dependent upon us choosing a path rooted in love.
And they really didn't want to arrest me. They were saying, you know, you can still just walk across the street. You don't have to get arrested. And I was like, no, I'm just going to stay here. And so they let, handcuffed my arms behind my back, and then they said, well, you better, you gotta get up or we'll carry you off, like it was sort of a threat. And I said, well, I guess you better carry me. So, but the whole time I just felt so calm and just like being in, we call being in a meeting for worship, a covered meeting for worship, where the sense of the Spirit is palpable there. It's really sort of a state of grace, little mini state of grace. And so I really felt that way. I just felt very peaceful and joyous. That for me has been a transformational experience. I was never arrested before, but I'm ready to be arrested again.
We are facing eviction because earlier today Mayor Menino announced a midnight deadline for Occupy Boston to leave Dewey Square. It's a little nerve-wracking. It's also kind of sad too, when you're in a place for over 2 months and you see people just dismantling tents around you and like the community, the physical community kind of disappearing. As a group, we're completely committed to nonviolence and peace. So if things get violent, we might not necessarily be in solidarity with the protesters, but we definitely want to be here and be a voice of peace and love and hope. So with that in mind, that's what we're here to represent, and if that means standing in solidarity with protesters in a nonviolent situation, then so be it. If it does get violent though, then we'll have to separate ourselves from the occupation.
What is your plan tonight?
Well, in a lot of ways it's a distillation of what we've been doing all throughout and from the beginning, which is to be a presence of accompaniment, to exemplify and offer a presence of peace and to encourage peace both within the occupation and with those who will be coming to evict us.
Well, it was always an experiment. This has always been an experiment, and we knew that it wasn't likely to last all that long. We are shocked that it actually has, if we think about it. So, this is a death and rebirth experience. We're just passing through one kind of death to see what kind of new form it takes. And just like the very first night, just like the very first day in New York, just like the very first General Assembly in the Common in Boston, just like the very first night when everybody showed up here, we didn't know what form it was going to take. All we can do is respond to things as they happen and sort of respond to the visions and the creativity and the ideas that we get.
We have creativity!
We have creativity!
We have joy!
We have joy!
We have all the experience of the last 2+ months!
We have all the experience of the last 2+ months!
So let's not give them
the fight
they're looking for!
The fight